Bueno, bienvenidas, bienvenidos. Esperamos que más personas se vayan conectando a este evento de Blake. Es un honor tenerte acá con nosotros en CMX Connect Colombia. Vamos a ver que listo. Ya están viendo la presentación rápidamente. Estamos en CMX Connect Colombia. Nosotros estamos ayudando a los gestores de comunidad a prosperar, a cambiar esa mentalidad que el community manager sea un profesional solamente de redes sociales, sino que utilice más herramientas, más buenas prácticas para gestionar de forma efectiva las comunidades digitales. Nuestras 3 metas son, primero, conecta, conoce una persona asombrosa a la vez. Entonces, Mónica va a conocer acá a Alex, Blade nos está conociendo a todos. Luego, aprende, obtén un conocimiento que puedas implementar en el día de hoy. Ojalá que le saquemos mucha información a Blake. Y defiende el crecimiento de la industria de comunidades digitales como tal. Estamos en la plataforma de Baby, no solamente sea anfitrión del evento, sino que construye una comunidad. Y en el día de hoy está acompañando Blake Ethridge, que es el Community Manager de DZone. Previamente ya hemos tenido a Agustín Villena, que es de la comunidad de agilismo de Chile, también Ricardo Triana del PMI, Jaime Andrés Restrepo de una comunidad bastante interesante de seguridad informática, y Carolina Ibáñez también nos ha acompañado hablando todas estas experiencias de Bayer a nivel de Latinoamérica. Entonces, listo. Bueno, hi Blake, how are you? Sorry about my English is so. And then we have a conversation, some informal. Do you have like 30 minutes to speak about DZone? And later we can open chat, we can open some question that Monica, Alex, Juan Diego, or another person to connect here in this event can say some experience and good practice. Okay, Blake.
Yeah. So, hola, ¿cómo está? Es muy PowerPointo. I put some slides together, which is like for essentially like if I was starting out as a community manager, what were like the things I wish like somebody had told me. So I just do like 10 slides together that basically walks through that. So it's like for a lot of people out there, whether you're new or existing, what are some of the like just the main things, not the frameworks and the stuff that's going to put you to sleep, but I put together some slides that will kind of like get everybody energized. And there's a little bit of Spanish in there too. So.
Okay, Blake. Let's talk about DZone. Let's talk about your role like community manager. To understand what do you do every day to grow that community.
Yeah. So I like I was saying, I put some slides together. I don't know if you want to.
Okay. Let's show the slides.
Yeah. So basically this is just for like if I was a community manager, what I wish people would have told me, just some of the basic stuff, right? Because a lot of the stuff, whether I'm doing at DZone or at other big companies, people are like, what are they doing differently? Like, why are these communities so great, but I'm struggling? What are some of these things like that I can take away that's going to set me apart from the competition? So which is like for muy rápido competition do community, right? So.
Okay, please speak slowly to understand. Okay, we have Alex that have some speak English very well, some fluid.
Okay.
Let's start, Blake.
Sí. Gracias for having me here today. Welcome to the Radiohead Sing-Along with your host, Juan Diego. Incorrecta, wrong slide. So your community exists, but really when we talk about us as community managers, is it alive? Does anybody care? Is anyone having any fun? Like you go out with some groups of friends, whether to drink beer or to meet up, it could be the most boring time of your life, you know, and other times, other groups of people with, it's so fun. There's never a dull moment. There's never anything boring, right? So for communities, if your community went away tomorrow, would anyone even notice, right? Getting to that magic, that feeling you associate with a company, a brand, a community, a movement isn't always easy, right? So there's some bands, music, movies, comics that you gravitate to and are excited. They make you smile immediately, and others like you could care less about, right? If I'm talking to Juan Diego about, say, like Harry Styles, he could probably care less, right? So those are some of the things with community. And kind of like at the outset, we look at community versus social media. I really look at it, community is building family. You know, it's building a family, un familia, right? And social media is so much more about like building audiences, right? MQL, which is basically marketing qualified leads, it's much more transactional. And so there's a big difference between just like getting an audience and a totally different type of approach if you're trying to like build a family, right? So we all come from families. And so we know like building a family is a much different experience. And for me, that's community. It's building that family. And when we say that uno familia, what are we building with the community? And so like the exercise, like, you know, for a lot of days on whether I'm at DZone or any other company I'm at or with other people, the three things to kind of just write down that's going to keep me honest at different points is going to be like, what's my community story? What are those 2 to 3 sentences that's like always going to resonate, right? So if I had to say for like Juan Diego, who am I as a person? When people see me, am I a smiling person? Am I kind of like the just seem too mean? What is it, right? So if I do my community story, if an someone executive or a member stop me and says, what is your community about? Like, why should I care? And so I just always writing that story down that explains in 2 to 3 sentences what my community is about, right? So when we're at DZone, it's basically a developer and software community where people can share knowledge and help other people, right? So our is for knowledge sharing to help other people. So if you're in the trenches trying to do your job, you know, you're looking for those technical resources, where are they, right? So the community, you kind of need to know what that story is. And then you really need to aspire to 3 values, uno, dos, tres values that you want your staff and members to represent, right? So if we're at a very friendly, fun, welcoming community, those are the values we're going to represent. People that are mean or always attacking and aggressive at others, those go against the values, right? So it's going to be very hard to build a community if, with anyone that doesn't share those 3 values. And so for us, when we write that down, like, what are those 3 values? How are we doing with those values? And that 3rd bullet point is basically, what is the culture I want to foster and grow? So just the exercise for your community, whatever you're working with today, your business, your opportunity, just visualize in 5 years, what do I want this family of community members, this business to look like in 5 years? What do I see? What does that kind of look like in 1 to 5 years? And how far away am I from getting there? And then once I kind of know what that is, then a lot of times you'll start to see gap opportunities of stuff that you're not doing today that you could immediately start doing tomorrow. So it's a really great exercise. And for me, community, it all starts with relationships. My Spanish sucks, but basically I put that into some Spanish that basically complements that. And really for the community, it's fill out your budget, how much money you have. What's that great end-to-end experience? You want that master, like that magic customer journey. So for the, basically for starting out and like, how do I grow? Where do I get members? Really starting to connect with each and every member, right? So I know Juan Diego or I wouldn't be here. So for us, it started with the relationship. So anyone you meet, any member, it's basically starting with the relationship that you start to build with that member and all the other members, right? So when you kind of look across the stuff where community happens member by member, like really on these three things, outreach. When you talk to community members, when I start to go out and I'll talk about how this is done, when we basically had at a community I was at, for Yakai Chen, who you see there on the left with me, my very first conversation, time I talked to Yakai, the person in the picture, it's how can I help you? What do you need? What are you trying to do that I can assist with, right? So I'm not going in saying, can you do this? Can you do that? Like your best weapon as a community member is really like in that initial outreach is, well, how can I help you? What were you needing? Are you trying to do something that I can help you with? So if you're like in this big conference room and you're like at a meeting somewhere, you could basically feel lost. Like, I don't know where to go. And so a lot of times when you're like with those members, you're not trying to push anything on them. You're trying to help them out and just starting that dialogue. And they'll say like, like, hey, I really need to learn more about your product here, or this is what I need. And that's really like one of your biggest weapons is just listening. It's not like asking them to do something. First, build that relationship and really from them to say, how can I help you? What do you need? And then understanding like where you can help them out, right? And when you can start to actually provide value in that value exchange, that's where you're really going to start to get it out. And then, Juan Diego and others may say like, hey, wait a minute, we're trying to build like millions and millions of people, lots of people, lots of people. How can I possibly do that? So like in the early days of a community, or even like if you've got a community already off the ground, I tell you, this is like one of the easiest things to do is just, if you have a Calendly or something similar, send out some messaging where like members can schedule a one-on-one time with you over Zoom or some solution, just to basically to catch up. What's going on with your life? What's going on with your company? How can we help you out? Let's basically connect to see how we can help each other, see what you're doing. Spend that time like getting to know that other person. And alternate ways, when you've got really large communities, you can do like virtual office hours. So set up a Zoom for 1 hour and send out messaging for your community like, hey, come on in at any point of this hours and ask us questions. And we'll just basically sit out on a webcam for an hour and then anyone can come on, we'll find out what you're doing, or just basically have like a regular live new member session where new members that could be a little bit more lost can connect with you or other staff and kind of basically you're able to help them out. And then essentially one of the biggest parts that's missing with a lot of communities, so Juan Diego joins like a big Lionel Messi fan club, that's great, but there's nothing obvious about how to get involved, right, or to be active. In so many communities, it's like how to do this or that in terms of creating a forum thread or reply, but there's really like no instructions for like, well, what adventure do I even want to take? Like, how can I even really get involved? So really making it easy and clear for the community members to easily understand like the range of the ways they can be involved in the community. So on DZone, which is generally user-generated content where people come to write articles, that's great. That's one part of the journey. And then my job is to say, not only can you come to write articles, you can also be on podcasts. You can also come to live stream shows. You can also create your own live shows and talk shows and do other ways, right? So if you don't want to write, you can come and basically drive like video shows. You can also do stuff with audios. You can also do stuff with training. You can also do stuff for like helping out in different ways. So just being very clear on the adventures that they can go on. And so that's really the way that I love to activate community members, is when they come in and you're onboarding them, is like, here are the adventures you can choose from. And so a lot of the ways, it's like going into a restaurant. What entrees or appetizers do you have? What's your seafood? What's your salad? What's your meat? Community members, it's like basically for a lot of the times, like, what all can I do here, right? So that's really helpful to spell that out. And then when we're looking at building growth, a lot of the stuff that is all these like different things people do, but so much comes back to shared identity. And so for us, like when you look at Lyft and other types of companies out there, or Nike, I can see that swoosh and see someone out running, and they're probably a part of like the Nike community, right? So the shared identity, it's like easily recognizable. The rites of passage are like, what's when a new member comes in, or they get indoctrinating like with the torch? Is there a certain ritual that they're getting basically brought into the community with, so they can kind of like, you know, when you have a new family member, do you take them out for beer? It's like everybody has this like shared experience. In New Zealand, they have these like wine bottles, and they get a samurai sword, and the new people that come to these parties, they take the samurai sword and cut the top of the wine bottle off, and then everybody cheers, and that's the way that they greet them. So in communities, like, what are those rituals and rites of passage? And then, you know, what's that shared experience kind of look like? And so if I had to ask myself, what happens if community members that are strangers meet, you know, are they going to have like, are they even going to talk to each other, right? So the shared experience, like everybody that comes into your community, are they having a great time? And then, like, as I mentioned, the shared values, the three things that keep it simple for what kind of represents your community, what's going to separate it apart. There's some communities where it's very toxic, people are seem very angry or not very helpful. And there's other communities with fun and helpful values, and those are going to be great. And then lastly, just on the building growth, it's about like creating great relationships. And the great relationships really spill over into kind of tailored experiences, off-hour experiences, karaoke experiences. And so, as I mentioned, like when we're like crafting the overall journey, like the, you know, listening is so much vital. And then when you provide that great experience across the board, like you control like your experience on the customer journey. And I'll actually just go one slide ahead. So when we look at the great customer journey, it's really not about like budget, right? So the experience of the client, right? And so like anywhere someone gets into my digital turf or in person, I control that experience, right? So it's like the right content and experience at the right time for every stage. It doesn't matter about the budget, anything else. We control that great experience that comes in. So it's like welcoming a new member, welcoming a lurker, talking to active members, like really for there, obsessing over every part of that, like, you know, so basically to have like that great customer journey, it's like everyone as a community member, we control like how amazing and great that journey is. And oftentimes people kind of like, will kind of forget really to do that. And so when I like come back to something like this, and we talk about like for community members like Joaquin out of Barcelona, like when I go to Barcelona, Joaquin may have a tailored experience for me, certain dining restaurants we go to and hanging out, having some business meetings during the day. And then in the after hours, we may go and do like some fun experiences, right? So we're basically, you know, bringing in community members on site or having fun events, you know, going to parks where we're just like doing different things. So a lot of the times it may not even make sense from a business perspective, but basically when you're at a park for 30 minutes at a happy hour or doing these other types of experiences or over dinner, everybody's bonding and networking and growing together. Even as something as silly as a karaoke, people are able to connect and have fun, right? So like those bonds in your community connecting is not always like tangible. So when you think about the activities and fun stuff that you're doing, so much are like, what are these like great ways that we're putting together where people can actually connect each other, right? So, and unfortunately going backwards, I should be going forward. And then kind of like one other thing really quick is just being a great ambassador. So as a community member, the hard part is we're like on the clock 24/7. So me as a community manager, as I go around, I've got members interacting and engaging me, like whether I'm at an airport, whether like I'm like walking somewhere, walking my dogs, and people want to like talk, right? And so it's just kind of like, you know, I have to know that I have to stay refreshed, stay active, stay smiling. Every interaction I have with somebody, no matter how trivial it seems, can really almost at times like make or break like a relationship or an opportunity. So really sort of setting the tone, setting that mood and culture that I want others to aspire to. So like with Juan Diego, everywhere he goes, people associates Juan Diego, always smiling, always full of energy. And so it's not an easy job. And we have to, a lot of times behind the scene, just to stay refreshed and stay active in other ways so that we do that. And then, you know, when you put like that type of stuff to the, you know, to the test, so much of this customer journey is not only about the great experience, but then from the community member experience. When you look at this from a 360 holistic perspective, you know, we want to reduce lag time. So whether you're like on social media or a community, like the lag time is like how often does like Juan Diego come over to our community and what's keeping them from doing it? So if all I have is programs, they get bored with that, there's nothing else, right, for them to come back to, like that lag time is going to be a lot greater. Then in our community, we start to add in fun activities and events and other ways for them to do stuff. And the events are going to be different between like a webinar. It can't just be somebody speaking like this. You also got to do group activities, right? And other types of stuff. And then you're adding activities with your events, your webinars, your live streams. You've got councils, customer councils, you've got content. And then as you add to that, you're hoping that you're reducing your lag time so that everything you're adding to that member experience, you're adding velocity so that they're spending more and more time in more and more different ways with your community, and also reducing like being burned out from just doing one thing. So if all you have is councils, you're probably going to get burned out like pretty quick. So you need like a full like ecosystem for them to come and plug and play into. And just a few other slides, community is a huge competitive advantage, right? So as I mentioned, regardless of your budget, your swag, your size of your team, you know, and how your community stands out, it really comes down to those relationships, right? So oftentimes I spend so much time focusing on the relationships with all the community members, whether at DZone or other places, and making sure they can connect with each other, because once the community starts to care about each other, so once me and Juan start to care about CMX Connect and other people and places we go to, now we've got a community. People are investing in those relationships with the staff and with each other. So when your competition comes in, like if you're talking to people every day or once a week or once a month, your competition may only be talking to those people like once a year. Or they may say, hey, Juan Diego, here's a t-shirt. And then you spent time with that community member. You know the names of their kids, you know their pets, you know the bands they listen to, right? So it's going to be really tough for your competition to steal them away. And your competition can have the greatest feature set in the world, but they can't copy your community and its members, right? So you look at your competition, if they're not talking to their members at all, if all they're doing is very transactional stuff, it's like, who cares? So what, right? You're building like great relationships and a great experience, agnostic of everything else, to where like every budget, every swag, and the size of your team becomes icing on the cake, right? So when we say like a great community with Juan Diego, people associate that with like, every time I go there, I get what I need. It has tremendous value to me. I know the staff, I know other people, I know other members, and I actually care about them, right? That's a huge, huge competitive advantage. People can talk about frameworks, swag, and headcount, all this great stuff, but really those great relationships and everyone caring about each other, that's really where you get to the hardest stuff. And so I just say, like, those are some of the things I wish people told me. I wish everyone well on their community journey, and they have great stuff. And don't forget, there is a book called The Business of Belonging. It's not in Spanish yet. So those are some of the few things. I'll stop sharing on my slides there, but that was just like some of the stuff on community that I just kind of wish people had, because really it's like there's so much stuff on relationships and building a great experience that I think hopefully will resonate with people here. So that's like, these things are like, don't always have a cost associated with them. And it's something that we control as community managers. And that was like so in the next act, we will start to sing Harry Styles songs as we get Juan Diego and Alexander at the stage.
For the Harry Styles fans right here. Gracias, Blake. Thank you, Blake, for this knowledge that you share with us. No sé si alguien en la sala tenga preguntas para Blake. Let me check on the chat. Well, I have one question because es mi percepción, first in Spanish and then in English, I think. Tengo como una percepción de que hoy en día, con tanto evento en línea y que todos estamos haciendo tantas cosas en línea, se ha vuelto más difícil crear esas relaciones cercanas en nuestras comunidades. ¿Cómo ve Blake el tema? I have I have this problem with Bevy. I know it's a problem of my laptop. Blake, I have this feeling around all these, I don't know how to call it, an avalanche or online events, because obviously of the quarantine and so on. And I have this perception that it's so difficult right now to bring all the human contact to the communities because these online events. How do you approach right now online to create that familiar and so on environment that you talk about?
Yeah, so I think, so here's the thing with so many virtual events. The problem is, it's just, you're tuning into something where you're completely detached from it. You're completely removed. You're just sitting there watching people speak. There's no engagement. Sometimes there's some fun stuff in chat. And so every virtual event you go to that's like that, it's like, wait a minute, I'm just talking at me like I don't even exist. There's nobody like talking to me in chat. And sometimes it's fun. If I go to an event, I see some friends and people I know, but it's like, so it's really boring. And so that's great. So there's so many that are like that. It's just talking heads, people talking to you. You could just be listening to like an ad on Hulu, or you could just be like, it's like a TV commercial, right? So like, so many virtual events are basically just TV commercials. So what? Who cares? And so with your community events, like, I've got like 10 things to do. Why the heck should I go to your event? And so basically on that type of thing is like, what's to it? what ways are we going to allow the community to have some fun activities at the start of it or throughout it, right? So at the very first start of some of the community meetings, where we intentionally say, we are going to call up community members to the stage and share your life and work updates. Everybody goes around and they get a chance, everybody that's a community member gets a chance to come up on the stage and to do something. And for us, it's just sharing updates. What's going on with your work or life? If you don't want to come up, you don't have to. But right off the bat, when you itemize out like just a live event or a webinar, you're like, what can I add to that event where all the community members can actually do something and be a part of this meeting? So step one, there's opportunities where you can get them up to the main stage to do something. What is it do you want to actually get up and do? And you can actually give them homework before. Or you say like, hey, like be prepared to come up on stage and to do some stuff or to talk. So that's one way to do it. And then you've got like fun activities. So you can literally have a trivia contest with your members. And you can use like the chat on Bevy. So I just did one with people, no budget, and just like, hey, we're gonna do like a 20-question trivia. Everybody gets to go into the chat, the first person with the right answer. So right off the bat, it becomes engaging. Or you do stuff like, where it's like your, it's the treasure hunt type deals. And then when you kind of like, you back out for like live stream events and other types of stuff where you can literally start to do your own talk shows. And then with your community members, you're like, hey, you like to speak on this topic, come on to my talk show for 2 minutes. Like, and share your experience. Or if you've done something in my community, I've got like a bi-weekly talk show where I can bring in 5 to 10 community members at a time and they get to participate. So the key like thing that's missing with so many events, virtual events and webinars, community members don't feel like they have an opportunity to participate. So when you start to do those events, you're like, oh my gosh, we're leaving so many people out of this equation. So it's like if you're on a date and you bring a friend, they're the third person. And so many events, it's like the audience becomes the third person. And really like what we're trying to do is everybody should feel a part of that table and conversation, not like this afterthought. So it's really like on the activities, how do I want to start it off? What are the ways that I basically want to activate the members where they can get involved? And in another case, there's a free tool called Google Sheets and Google Docs. And you can say like, hey, everyone, we're trying to solve a problem. So if the speaker was Alexander, we're going to basically go over to Google Doc and there's going to be some lines of copy. Everybody copy and paste that and write like your own answers. And so now like everybody can start to engage. Alexander can go and look at what other people wrote as solutions. And then anyone that didn't like wants to involve, they can go to other people and talk to them like, hey, what if you did this or what if you did that? And so you basically give like a whole group activity where people can actually go and start to help out other people and engage with other people. So everything's about like group activities and bringing in group activities to live events or bring community members so they're not just like Monica in the chat, they're Monica on the stage, right? And then it's like, whether it's the different types of events, and then as I itemize that out across like a calendar, it's like every quarter I want one big event that's going to be one really big fun activity where everybody, like the most mass thing we can possibly do, the biggest like TikTok dance that could be silly, whatever the heck it is, that's going to be the big thing every month where the whole family gets together. And then there's going to be like these other events where it's like I can get people in at like various type of stuff, but regular programming. So if it's like a TV station, so every other Thursday, I'm bringing like 5 to 10 members here, and then knowing like the different topics, like, and then also activating them like, hey, is there stuff that you want to do? Is there types of webinars you want to run? And then you start to bring in guests. So I've got like one community member that's going to like do their own talk show, and they're going to bring in like 2 community members every time. And so that's really the trick. Is it's not like having a webinar, it's like, what are all the different ways we can get these community members involved? So if I'm Alexander and my community is 20 people, I don't want like 5 of the people that are up and feeling active and the other 15 are like, I am bored out of my mind. And so I'm looking at, I've got these 10 people, they're happy, they're engaged. How am I going to get these other 10 people? What excites them? What are the activities they want to do? They're still sitting down virtually. I haven't really seen it. And so then I may say like, hey, these 10 people, like, what are the things that excite you? What are the things that interest you? And maybe not all of them like have something, but like understanding like where I can start to tap into their passions, or if there's something I haven't even like accounted for. But if I had to like visualize it and to simplify it, I want all 20 members of the room in some ways feeling like participating. I don't want them sitting there like I'm some like boring like high school teacher or middle school teacher. So that's like the stuff that I look at.
Great answer. So I don't know if I have to do this in English or Spanish. Because this is CMX
Three
Colombia.
hours to translate. Yes.
And it's supposed that CMX Colombia se habla español, CMX Colombia speaks Spanish. So, el reto es rompernos la cabeza e intentar generar nuevos esquemas de interacción, formatos nuevos, a romper el molde y generar formatos donde la gente suba al escenario, haga cosas diferentes, participe de manera diferente. Maybe that's the reason for the success right now of on Clubhouse, because people can share their opinions on stage. Maybe. Mónica has a question. Mónica dice, estamos construyendo una plataforma virtual para conectar a empresarios con contactos de valor. Por ejemplo, clientes y proveedores. ¿Qué ideas se te ocurren para generar y sostener una comunidad? Monica is launching a new web platform to connect entrepreneurs, with clients, providers, and distributors. So what ideas could you give to Monica to launch that community and to maintain the excitement on the community?
Yeah, so I think for the getting started, like the personal touch is really like one of the main things that is going to set people apart. And so it's investing in relationships with all the contacts that you have or that are going to be excited with it. So really scheduling, whether it's a coffee or a virtual event with as many of those people as possible, and just basically outline your plans, what you're going to do, and start to tap in the ways that they feel excited or want to get involved with it. But step one is that personal relationship, connecting with, here's what I'm doing, love to get you involved in some way with the community. Let's do one-on-one over Zoom, coffee, beer, wine, whatever. That's like step one.
Así está, Mónica. Entonces, ese reto grande, thank you, Blake, de intentar conversar uno a uno, por lo menos con los primeros miembros, para que se involucren de manera personal. That's different from the usual approach and right here in Colombia to start these communities, because we have this idea that we have to run a community with a lot of people and massive events, but the one-on-one interaction is like, well, maybe later. But you propose to do first the one-on-one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it doesn't scale, but it's just try to do it as much as you possibly can. So you can kind of cheat through like virtual events, and then so it's like the people you care about the most. And for the larger ones, and where it's just like sending out like basically a blast email, it's like, here's a virtual event of what we're doing. But then like at the events, one of the things is the tricks is going to be like the rituals. And so in the US, like people just don't understand like rituals, and which are like family traditions. So if I'm Alexander, I go back to my family, there may be a tradition that's unique in our family that we do, but it creates a strong bond. And so I think in these early stages, like with startups and entrepreneurs, like if I have them out, like start to do like just a meetup, I'll start to basically run meetups at bars, other places, outline what we're trying to do. But instead of it just being me, like saying like, hey, this is Alexander, people just talk to you like an infomercial. When you're just boring, is to say like, you've got this party of guests, and then you say like, hey, everyone, everybody raise a toast. Tell an inspiring business story. And so your goal here today at the start of our journey, tell an inspiring business story of, whether someone said you could make it and you made that accomplishment. And so everybody's talking about a challenge and something they did to overcome, but you're like right away or tapping into like that spirit of who these people are, what makes them tick. It's not just having a party people show up. And so you're like starting to like plant the seeds of what's going to separate your operating group apart. There's thousands of groups that meet, but how many of them like do people even really care about versus the ones where you start to have a strong bond? So get everybody also together, do something like a shared ritual, like a toast. Everyone goes around, expresses a challenge, something like that. And then like the other things at these events is make sure like to take everyone around and start to introduce them to each other, make sure to connect with everybody at these places. And so a lot of the stuff is going to be like those icebreakers, connecting with the people at the outset. But then as you start to have people there, once we get people in the door, that's great. Now your next thing is kind of like how are we going to keep people there? And so you say like, hey, if anyone here wants to talk at the kind of like the next meeting, let's basically have like 4 or 5 people that come in at like 5 minutes and talk. And so everybody feels like the stage is constantly, everybody has a chance to be up on stage and to talk and to do these other types of events. So those are going to be some of the main things basically from the get-go is really so much as the early stuff is the relationships and setting the stage with the strong bonds and rituals.
Ahí está, esa lección yo creo que nos va a quedar muy bien aprendida, y por acá está una amiga de la casa que se llama Jessica. Jessica, aprendámonos esa lección de los rituales, tener rituales que generen lazos fuertes. In the room is Jessica. Jessica is a friend of us. Together we are running a new community for women entrepreneurs. So the rituals, I think the rituals are very important for us. So Blake, thank you very much for your time. As I watch, you are a Back to the Future fan.
Yeah, it's just like a storyboard. Like, I don't know. It's like when you just, yeah. So I just started, it's a terrible hobby, but yeah, I just started collecting like stuff used from the movies. So just like having stuff up that just inspires you, like works of art, things like that. I don't know, like you just, whether it's like a quote or different types of things, like so you put like a picture of a family member or something like in your house that you can just look at and just, for whatever reason, like if you're tired, 3 hours of sleep, you can just look at it, just get you fired up or inspired in different ways. So instead of blank walls and, usually with guys, everyone's like, your place looks empty, your walls are empty. So it's like, you've got to put something up. So you don't just have like a blank wall, because then it's like, everyone's like, why is your wall blank? And so then you start to pull in like cool stuff. So it's like Back to the Future, okay, volume 11, love it. So, and in my social media, I just actually ran like a Back to the Future month last month, and I teamed up with the marketing team that runs Back to the Future social media. We did like a fun thing, got like 1.5 million views, and so that was pretty cool.
Thank you so much. And Jessica has a question about the slides. Could you please share us the slides, is the question.
Yeah, so according to Alexander, it's like each slide is 80,000 Bitcoin. Yeah. So we can throw the slides up to like Google Drive or whatever. So it's just like, it's just really interesting for a lot of times for the community professionals. It's really just what's unique about Alexander, the way that you've grown family or friendships, these things of like, sometimes we get lost in the weeds of budgets, of how big my team should be and all this stuff. Or this community over here has so much more money than we do. And it's like, yeah, but is anyone even having fun over there? Does anyone even name, like if Alexander was a staff member, could anyone even name like another community member? Do people even like care about each other? And oftentimes like with a community, when you're at a trade show, one of the biggest like proofs of this stuff is like you see two community members that are strangers walking past each other and they don't say anything. They're like, I could care less. But then two other strangers that have like a hoodie or a t-shirt on for like Legos or a brand, they're like, oh, you too. And there's that instant like bonding. And the crazy thing is that usually the one where the people are like geeking out have like the lowest head count, the lowest budget, but they got the relationship and the experience right. And so for me, it's like start small. And everywhere that people are going, and they're having a great experience and feeling like they have a great relationship, I'm going to beat the competition every day of the week because everybody's having deeper relationships with me, the community, and deeper ties and all that stuff. The competition is just like, who cares?
Thank you so much, Blake. That's a very, very smart insight for us. And thank you. Gracias a todos los que están aquí en este momento. En este momento voy a parar la grabación. So I'm stopping the recording.